Well, we've got some pretty significant news to dive into that broke just this past Saturday, March 22nd.
Yeah, definitely. A name many in the legal and political world are going to recognize. Jessica Aber. She passed away in Alexandria, Virginia.
Yeah, and the initial call to the police came in somewhere around 9:18 to 9:12 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturday.
Reporting an unresponsive woman.
Right.
And sadly, it was later confirmed to be Jessica Aber, just 43 years old.
Yeah, way too young. And of course, as is standard procedure in these types of situations, the Alexandria Police Department immediately started to, look into the circumstances surrounding her passing. I mean, it's just protocol, right? To make sure they understand what happened.
Absolutely. A matter of course, as they described it.
Right. Now, for those of you who might not immediately recognize the name, Jessica Aber held a really prominent position. She was the former U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia.
Big job.
Yeah. She was nominated by President Biden and took on that role back in October of 2021. And what's really interesting is that her confirmation by the Senate was actually unanimous. And in today's political climate, that kind of bipartisan support really tells you something about the respect that she commanded across the aisle.
For sure.
And her tenure as U.S. Attorney lasted until January of this year, 2025, when she resigned with the start of President Trump's second term. And she had plans to, continue her legal career in the private sector.
One of the first details that came out, though, was that there was actually a bit of ambiguity around whether the home that Mrs. Aber was found in was actually her own home.
Oh, interesting.
Now, this might seem like a minor detail, but, these sorts of things are really important in that initial fact-finding of any investigation.
Yeah, of course. It's like in the beginning, every little piece of the puzzle matters.
Right.
But thankfully, as we learned more throughout the day on Saturday and then the following days, the picture surrounding the likely cause of death started to become clearer.
Yeah, and the Alexandria Police Department, they followed up on their initial statement with more information later and said that their detectives had found really no evidence whatsoever to suggest that Mrs. Aber's death was caused by anything other than natural causes.
Okay, so that's good to hear. And then following that, we also got a very moving statement from Jessica Aber's family, which was released on Wednesday, March 26th. And as you can imagine, they expressed just tremendous sorrow at her passing. It's always so sad to hear about a family dealing with such a significant loss, especially someone so young.
It really is.
Yeah.
And actually, their statement contained a really, really crucial detail. Her family shared that she actually died in her sleep.
Ah, wow.
And very importantly, they also shared that she had suffered from epilepsy and epileptic seizures for many years.
Oh.
So they went on to say that they believe her death was very likely the result of an epileptic seizure. And that, of course, lines up perfectly with the police department's assessment that her death appeared to be from natural causes.
Yeah. I mean, that detail from the family really helps paint a clearer picture of the situation.
It does.
And the fact that they openly shared about her, long-term health condition seems to, really support those initial findings from the police.
For sure.
And we also heard from a family friend who spoke with CBS News. And that person also confirmed that her death is, quote, believed to be the result of a long-standing medical issue, end quote.
So at this point, it seems like everything is pointing in the same direction.
Right. But it's also important to note, for everyone listening, that while these are really strong indicators, the case officially remains open. That's just standard procedure until the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner for Virginia issues their final ruling.
Makes sense.
And we understand that at least as of Monday morning, March 24th, the medical examiner hadn't yet had the opportunity to even examine Mrs. Aber. But the family has said they expect to have more definitive information in the coming weeks. So it sounds like, even though the preliminary information and her family's statement really point toward a natural cause, most likely related to her epilepsy, we're still waiting on that official determination. And, understandably, given everything, the family has requested privacy as they go through this difficult time.
A request we should all respect.
Absolutely. Well, I think now would be a good time to shift gears a bit. We've talked about the circumstances of her passing.
Right.
But I think it's also important to, reflect on the amazing career she had.
Yeah.
I mean, she really made some pretty significant contributions to the legal landscape in the Eastern District of Virginia.
You did.
So to really understand the scope of her work, maybe we can start from the beginning.
Sounds good.
So she actually began her career with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Virginia back in 2009. But before that, she'd already gotten experience working in private practice.
Okay.
And when she joined the U.S. Attorney's Office, she served as an assistant U.S. attorney. Now, I know for a lot of our listeners, they might not know exactly what that means.
Right.
So essentially, an assistant U.S. attorney is a federal prosecutor. They're the lawyers who represent the United States government in federal court.
Yep.
And they handle a huge range of criminal cases.
So that role would have given her a really solid foundation in federal law enforcement and how prosecutions work.
Exactly. And her career really progressed within the Department of Justice.
Yeah.
Around 2015, she became counsel to the Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division. Now, that's a mouthful.
It is.
But for context, the Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division, they oversee all sorts of federal criminal law enforcement efforts across the entire country. So working as counsel in that office, she would have had a really broad perspective on national criminal justice issues.
Yeah.
And she would even help shape policies and priorities at a really high level.
So she had this national level experience. And then around 2016, she moved back to the Eastern District of Virginia to become deputy chief of the criminal division there.
Oh, so back to where she started.
Exactly. And that was a really big step in terms of leadership, within that U.S. Attorney's Office.
Yeah, for sure.
As deputy chief, she would have been involved in managing and supervising a whole team of federal prosecutors who were working on a ton of different cases in the region.
And then, of course, as we talked about earlier, in October 2021, she became the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia.
Huge accomplishment.
Yeah. And what's remarkable is she was only the third woman ever to hold that position.
Wow.
I mean, that really said something, especially in a field that's historically been dominated by men. It really highlights her talent and the respect she earned from her colleagues. And as U.S. Attorney, she led a staff of about 300 people across 4 different divisions. That's Alexandria, Richmond, Norfolk, and Newport News. I mean, that's a lot of people to be responsible for.
It is.
And her office dealt with a wide variety of cases, like really serious issues like terrorism and violent crimes. We know they secured convictions related to the MS-13 gang.
Right.
And they also tackled complex financial crimes like fraud, including the prosecution of a former governor of Virginia. So, we're talking about really high-stakes cases that require tons of expertise and resources.
Definitely.
And it's also important to keep in mind how sensitive some of the cases she oversaw were. Since the Eastern District of Virginia is so close to D.C., her office also had to handle cases related to classified information, things connected to defense and intelligence agencies. I mean, the level of trust and responsibility involved in those types of cases really speaks volumes about her integrity and competence.
It does. And her commitment to public safety went beyond just those federal prosecutions, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. She actually collaborated with Virginia Attorney General Jason Myers on something called Ceasefire Virginia.
Okay.
And that was a statewide initiative that was implemented back in 2022.
Okay.
And it was specifically designed to combat violent crime all over Virginia.
Wow. So she was really proactive in addressing crime at multiple levels of government.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, since the news of her passing broke, we've heard from a lot of her former colleagues, and they've been sharing their reactions and giving some really heartfelt tributes.
Yeah, the current U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District, Eric Siebert, released a statement, and it was so moving. He described Mrs. Aber as unmatched as a leader, mentor, and prosecutor.
Wow.
He said she was simply irreplaceable as a human being. He talks about her professionalism and how graceful she was, even when things were stressful, and he really emphasized how sharp her legal mind was.
Those are strong words coming from the person who's now filling her shoes.
They are.
And Virginia Attorney General Jason Myers also put out a statement, and he praised her dedication to public service and highlighted the positive impact that Ceasefire Virginia had on saving lives.
And it's clear that people really recognized and appreciated all her collaborative efforts.
Absolutely.
And beyond those formal statements, we've heard from some other colleagues, too, who described her as someone who was deeply, deeply committed to seeking justice. Someone who had a real eye for detail. And they mentioned that she would often be present in the courtroom, actually observing the major trials firsthand.
Oh, wow. So it sounds like she was really engaged in the core work of her office, like she never lost touch with the realities of federal prosecution.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's really remarkable to see how consistent the praise has been for her. I mean, all these tributes calling her an unmatched leader, a mentor, emphasizing her professionalism, her grace. I mean, these aren't just standard compliments.
No.
It seems like she was truly exceptional in her field.
She was. And she left such a positive impact on the people that she worked with, the people that she worked for.
Definitely. Well, maybe it would be helpful just to do a quick recap of the key moments in her career, just to make sure everything's clear for our listeners.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, so Jessica Aber started her legal career in the Eastern District of Virginia in 2009 after working in private practice. She held a number of important positions, including Assistant U.S. Attorney, Counsel to the Assistant Attorney General in D.C., and then Deputy Chief of the Criminal Division back in Virginia. And then, in October 2021, she achieved the role of U.S. Attorney.
And she was involved with the Ceasefire Virginia initiative in 2022.
Right.
And then, unfortunately, she resigned from her position as U.S. Attorney in January of this year, 2025.
Right. And then tragically, she passed away at her home in Alexandria, Virginia on Saturday, March 22nd, 2025.
And as we've discussed, the initial findings from the police, along with her family's statement, point to a natural cause of death, most likely related to her long battle with epilepsy.
Yeah, and for our listeners who'd like a little bit more background on her education, she actually got her undergraduate degree from the University of Richmond and her law degree from William and Mary Law School back in 2006. So she had really strong ties to Virginia.
Yeah, her roots were there.
And that really served as a foundation for her career.
Absolutely.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's important to reiterate what we know so far. We're still waiting for the official ruling from the medical examiner's office, but both Jessica Aber's family and the Alexandria Police Department believe her death was due to natural causes and most likely a result of an epileptic seizure.
Right.
And it's a reminder, a sad reminder, that life can be so fragile. Even someone in such a demanding and high-profile position can be dealing with significant health challenges behind the scenes.
It really makes you think about the fact that so many people are facing these invisible battles, while they're still out there making these huge contributions to their communities and their professions.
Yeah, that's so true. And, Jessica Aber's dedication to justice and all her public service in the Eastern District of Virginia, those are just undeniable achievements.
Absolutely.
And it's incredible that she achieved so much while also managing a long-term health condition. Her legacy is more than just the cases her office handled or the initiatives she supported. It's also about the strength and perseverance she showed as a leader, even when dealing with personal adversity.
Very well said.
Well, on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive for today. As always, thanks for joining us.
And be sure to subscribe to the show so you don't miss our next episode. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the news that matters. Until then, stay informed and keep asking those tough questions.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.